Okay.
Hello.
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 Hi. Hi, is that Gail and Sharon?
Yes.
That's Gail. Okay, is Sharon on the line as well?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Awesome. So we're just waiting on Erica to join. Thank you all for doing this. I really appreciate your time. I know how valuable it is. So the lineup for the speakers will be Dr. Erica Camacho. She's going to be the first person. Sharon, you'll be the second presenter. And then Gail, you'll be our final presenter before our discussion. So also, during the slide presentation, please let me know when you want me to advance the slide.
Okay.
And then I'll do that for you. So our regular tech person has the day off today. And so we have a stand-in tech person who's my boss. And so we are working out some of the kinks on our end. But I'm really happy to see that both of you are very clear and are in. So that's great. What the hell is going on? Hi, Erica, is that you?
Yes, I didn't hear. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Great, wonderful. Okay, I don't know if you heard what I had previously said to both Sharon and Gail. You will be the first speaker after my presentation, and well, you don't have any slides, so you don't have to worry about telling me when to forward. But so I'll have you up first.
That's great.
Great. This is excellent. Is there a, do you, it's a little hard for me to hear you, Erica. Is there a way that,
Like call in instead? Would that help?
okay,
You're still a little,
Garbled.
you're a little garbled. Might want to readjust your microphone.
good.
3 minutes to go.
So Erica?
Maybe that Erica, actually on my side here, it looks like she just dropped off.
Okay, maybe she's gonna call back in.
Okay,
It might be better on the phone.
Yeah.
It might be.
Thank you for clarifying. She started recording, so we'll just have to do some editing.
Can I ask a question while we're waiting? When somebody, a participant asks a question, are you going to tell us who you want to answer?
So I will, but you know, after I direct it to someone, then if someone else has something they'd like to add, that is welcome.
Okay.
Okay, so our participants should be in now.
Yeah, we are live.
We are
so
live. Yes.
We're just waiting for participants to join the webinar. So we're getting our speakers set up. So hold tight, and we'll start the webinar in about 2 to 3 minutes.
And are you able to hear me better now? I dial in instead of using the computer audio.
Oh, Erica,
That's
you're
wonderful. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, that's much
better.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for joining us here at FASTIV for our webinar series. Our webinar today is entitled Achieving Work-Life Balance in a Scientific Career. This is a topic that's particularly dear to me because I try to achieve this every day. Sometimes I think I'm not so successful, but every day is a chance to start again. Okay, so for today's webinar, our agenda will look a little like this. We're going to talk about what makes achieving work-life balance in science so difficult, recognizing when there is an issue with your balance inside the lab and outside the lab, and how to adjust that, and what does a good work-life balance look like. And then we'll explore smart ideas for achieving this balance. And then we're going to have three of our panelists that I'm very happy are able to join our webinar and to be panelists. Dr. Erica Camacho from Arizona State University, Dr. Sharon Milgram, the Director of the Office of Intramural Training and Education at NIH, and Dr. Gail Bishop, Director of Immunology at the University of Iowa. Okay. So I'm working the technology here, so if you just bear with me a moment. Okay, so towards the end of the webinar, we're going to have a question and answer time, and we really welcome your points of views and your ideas and questions. And our panelists are amply prepared to answer them. And you'll do so by typing your question in the white box, which is the blue arrow is pointing to, and then clicking the send button, which the gray send button indicated by the light blue arrow. So a little housekeeping. We are FASTIV, and we are the Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology. We're comprised of 30 member societies, and we represent over 130,000 researchers, biological and biomedical researchers. And our mission is to advance health and welfare by promoting progress and education in biological and biomedical sciences through our service to our member societies and collaborative advocacy. So these are the logos of our 30 member societies, which we're really proud of, and their support and collaboration are essential to FASTIV's work. Okay, so let's dive in. What makes achieving work-life balance so difficult in science? So stepping back a little bit, the first thing is, what is work-life balance? So work-life balance changes depending on who it is for. It's very specific, it's a very personal thing. So work-life balance is defined as the balance that an individual needs between time allotted for work and other aspects of their lives. It changes for each person, but generally, you are trying to balance your time for work as well as your family or loved ones, for your faith, and for your recreational interests. So those are the big things that the topic of work-life balance tries to incorporate. So we want to start with some myths about being a scientist. Although working in any field that you love, while interfacing with its movers and shakers is always a privilege, in the scientific workforce, this idea of privilege becomes the backbone of an unhealthy and sometimes extreme work practice. And it takes our commitment to science to another unsustainable expectation. So the first myth I put here is researchers should be glad to be allowed to do research. This is a thorny issue because although that it definitely is an awesome thing to do research for those who love it. you are still, as a researcher, still a human that needs uh, um, that has needs beyond the bench. Additionally, as a researcher, you're not sort of stumbling into science. You are a highly trained personnel that brings expertise to any research organization that you are a part of. And when you don't feel like you are giving anything to the organization, you tend to have this, or being an asset to the organization, you tend to feel a little out of place, or sort of the imposter syndrome, where this sense of privilege sort of thrives. And so you tend to get into some unspoken standards that are expected from, clinical staff or a PI. And some of those unspoken standards are that you are continuously on duty, that you're always available day and night for whatever the lab needs to be done. Another myth is a good researcher works day and night in the lab. And I'm sure all of us have done that, or at the clinical practice. And that you never work enough. There's always more work you can do to be a better scientist, more papers you can read, more things you can do to fill that time. And another myth about being a scientist is that your private life is sort of your problem. It's secondary to what you do to the lab. It just doesn't measure up in importance. And so these are myths that help to foster an environment that really helps put the work-life balance out of balance. So the first step, of course, is recognizing that something isn't quite right. So here I put, Houston, we have a problem. And really it is. How do you recognize that something is wrong and that you're not really enjoying this anymore? You want a do-over. So we're going to look at the topic of burnout. Scientists may show signs of stress that increases with time, and that leads to burnout. And it's usually due to really filling your plate or not taking breaks where you sort of reevaluate what is important. So what is burnout? Well, burnout is actually a distinct work-related syndrome which is characterized by emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced effectiveness and professional efficiency. So burnout affects both your productivity and your attitude. It physically alters your brain by enlarging your amygdala and causes prefrontal cortex spinning, which is something that I was very surprised to learn. And that the brains of people who are burnt out also show signs of damage similar to those who have experienced trauma. So burnout also reduces your productivity with decision fatigue and emotional fatigue. You frequently have mood swings and depression, where it is difficult to plug into what is happening around you and make appropriate choices. It also reduces your ability to focus, and often your work needs to be repeated due to subpar execution or maybe simple mistakes, and your productivity really plummets. It also takes longer to complete a task, something that used to take you 10 minutes to do. Now, just due to little mistakes and lack of focus, can take you 30 minutes. Some signs of burnout are akin to classic signs of depression, with a lack of motivation and insomnia, but also with signs specific to being overstressed, such as moodiness, as I had previously mentioned, high tension, and extreme irritability towards your colleagues and loved ones. So how do we achieve this? This is hard to, how do we not get burnt out? And so this is the whole take-home lesson, okay? So as I had told you, work-life balance is how you balance your time at work as well as your time at home to sort of be able to manage both in a way that you can do your best and can handle all the changes that are happening. So here are a few things that that help with achieving this balance. Okay, and again, achieving balance is really very personal. What helps you to be the best you? And so for each person, the boundaries you set, the goals you set will look different. But in general, self-management is really one of the key factors in achieving the balance that you're looking for. So first of all, saying no. Sometimes you just have to not take on additional work that will, prevent you from doing your best at the tasks you already have. Being efficient, which is really prioritizing doing one thing well, managing every area of your life. So in this self-management area, you will be saying no and being efficient in all of the areas of your life. So if it's some of your recreational interests, sometimes you have to say no, I can't serve on that committee, or no, I can't look at that paper even though I want to. I'm just swamped. Okay. Another aspect of self-management is sleep, exercise, nutrition, and mental development, which are key to keeping that balance going. And then setting goals. And so looking at setting goals under our next level of helping to achieve work-life balance looks at SMART goals. So the acronym SMART stands for achieving goals that are specific. So it's a very specific goal. It is measurable. So you know when you are finished. You know when you start and you know when you're finished. That's achievable. Something that isn't, I want to heal the world. Well, how do you achieve that? So you want an achievable goal, a realistic and reasonable goal, something that will work with your life, etc. T is for timely. Yes. So the time frame that you can achieve the goal. Some things take a year to do. Some things take a few minutes. And so this is how you help to set your time management up. You prioritize what is important from what is not important. And you distinguish between urgent and important tasks. Because sometimes an urgent task isn't necessarily an important one. And making those distinctions and doing what is important and what is urgent is key. And then you stop doing not important things and not urgent tasks, and delegate the others out to other people in your lab or at home, etc. Other things that we can do to help manage to help keep balance in our lives is stress management. So this is always a big one, because this is the one we see first off before the burnout comes. So some things that we can do is avoid multitasking. And I know that that's really a challenge to do when you have a lot of stuff happening at once. And in some cases, it can be successful if the things you're doing are sort of rote and don't require a lot of focus. But in general, multitasking leads to work that takes longer to do, and sometimes you miss the mark. So avoiding multitasking is a good practice. You take a break to help. When things get overwhelming, you want to take a break. If it's 5 minutes, go and walk to the water fountain and come back. Another way to manage stress is to edit yourself. Figure out, is this important? Do I need to do all these steps? Can I redo this in a different way that's more efficient? Reassigning work that you don't have to do, to help get something off your plate so you have more control over what you are doing. And something simple as putting on some music to help you just calm down and focus again. Another aspect of making balance is change management. This is always a tough one, because change is usually unexpected. Not always, but usually unexpected. And the first thing you want to do is, if there is an expected change, you want to have a plan. So you know it's coming, so you have a plan for when it gets there. But when there's an unexpected change, forming a network with people that can act as a backup for you is a great way to help to handle that change. Taking turns on things that can be shared with others. My husband and I, we take turns with, if there's a snow day or an early let out for school, we take turns with who stays home with the kids or who has to pick them up. And alternative working hours. Sometimes, in combination with taking turns, you can talk with your boss about shifting your work hours up or working longer days throughout the week to get, an extra day off to get the day off on Friday. So these are discussions that you can have with your PI or boss that can help mitigate changes that are coming that you know of, or some unexpected changes that you can switch up your schedule to help you mitigate these things. Technology management. So this was very interesting to me, to use technology as a way to mitigate your balance. So first, you've got to learn how to use technology for the things that you want to do. Calendars, invites, alarms, things of that nature. So first you got to learn how to work it, and then you have to learn how to use it to serve you. And the biggest part of technology management is really finding a balance between using the technology and not wasting time on the technology. The technology is used as a conduit to get other things done and to keep you on track. And when it crosses over into the line where you're spending hours on it, unless this is your private interest, then you need to be able to pull back from that. So leisure management, we don't usually think of this as something that helps with balance. But taking time off is one that, you need to take a break, take some time off. Well, that's sort of an obvious one. That helps you to sort of refocus and plan again, reevaluate what needs to be done. But you also need to manage your downtime. If your SMART goal for your leisure management, for your leisure time, is to do nothing for 2 hours, then do nothing for 2 hours. But if you have other interests and things you want to achieve during that time, you also need to manage that time well so that you can accomplish your goals. If it's going to the gym, you need to be able to say, okay, I'm going to go to the gym from this time to this time, and I'm going to stick to my time so I can make the most of my leisure time and get the most out of it. And you want to put time into developing and practicing your passions. For many people, science and biomedical sciences is a passion, and that's great. But those aren't your only passions. So you want to develop your whole person. So how do you find that you have burnout? Well, how do you resolve that? How do you make that? How do you turn that around? So the first thing is to do less. You figure out what you need, and then you remove the things that you don't need. And sometimes that's hard to do, just like how sometimes it's hard to say no. But you figure out what you don't have to do. You want to find your rhythm. You want to find what sort of works for you. Are you better in the morning? So do you plan, the heavy lifting items for your morning work, and then in the evening, in the afternoon, you sort of do the work that you can coast on, if that's something that your position will allow you to do. And then you can help to mitigate that stress response and sort of help to create that balance so that okay, at the end of the evening, I'm not, pounded with a million things, and I can easily separate and go home. It sounds weird, this next point, go for green or a pet, but research has shown that having a plant, taking care of a plant, or having a pet helps to reduce your stress levels and helps to mitigate burnout. Now, I don't recommend having a pet in a lab or the clinic, but at home is great. It's a great idea. And then you have to sort of care for something else, and helps you shift your focus from what you do all day to what you're doing in the evening. So you want to get happy. You want to do things that feed your happy self, that make you feel complete and make you feel satisfied. So you want to put time into those activities. And all of these activities help to, you want to learn something new. And this helps to increase your neuroplasticity. It helps your brain to continue to develop and grow in different ways. And usually that's done by learning something new, trying something you haven't tried before, so stepping out of your comfort zone, learning a language, etc. And you want to create a reward system for yourself. So you make these small, SMART goals, and then you reward yourself for achieving them. And this helps you to reframe what is important from what isn't, and it helps to resolve that issue of burnout. Okay, so for many of us, burnout also comes because at home we have a balance to a family to take care of, and in some cases that's not the case. But even if you don't have a family to take care of, you still have something else you want to do outside of your work environment. So doing this, you should, in order to set this up so you have this time, you need to set your boundaries. I'm working until this time, and after this time, I'm not going to be available any longer. Sometimes you can work from home. And if that's an option, then that's a wonderful way to do what you need to do. But even in that, setting boundaries that I'm working from home, but at this time of the afternoon, morning, whatever, I will not be available. I will have knocked off. Prioritize the night before. I have a shifted work schedule in my lab, and I work from 7 to 3. So before I leave my lab at 3 p.m., I know what I need to do for the next day, and I know how to, I know the experiments and other projects I need to do first thing, because they're going to take longer to complete, and I want to have enough time to do it. And sometimes, it takes a few times of trial and error to figure out what the right balance is for that. Do not multitask at work. Multitasking is a really, although sometimes it feels really effective when your plate is full, it really produces your efficiency and productivity. And so trying to stay focused on one item at a time is really a big part of making this balance work. You want to get help. You get help with things that you cannot do all yourself. And although we want to think that we can, because we're the biomedical workforce, the sad reality is we can't. And there is no shame in asking for help. And you want to be flexible and prepared for uncertainty. So life will always throw you curveballs, and that's just the reality. And so sometimes you have to put work on hold and take care of something at home. Or you have to say, okay, at home, this sounds important, but I'm going to have to, put that on hold for a few minutes and, focus on something else. So, I'm so pleased that, like I had said at the beginning of the webinar, that we have Dr. Erica Camacho, Dr. Sharon Milgram, and Dr. Gail Bishop. And these are leaders in our fields, and are still going through the process of getting this work-life balance down. And it's always sort of a process in evolution, right? And so they are our esteemed panelists today, and we're very happy for them to tell you all a little bit about their experience, and hopefully you can get something from what they're saying and apply to your own lives. So our first speaker is Dr. Erica Camacho. And she's hailing as an associate professor from Arizona State University. So Erica, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. I gotta start by saying that balancing life has always been a challenge for me. So rather than learning from what I've done right, I hope you learn from what I've done wrong and what I'm striving to do continuously. So I'm an applied mathematician that works in mathematical physiology, in particular trying to model retinitis pigmentosa. And I have 3 kids, a 19-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And I also come from an extended family, very traditional Mexican family. So I tend to be the caretaker of my parents. Now it's just my mom because my dad passed away. And I also love mentoring students. So that's one of the things that I need to balance with all the other demands that I have in my life, and which are multiple demands. And one of the things that for me has been very difficult and that I continuously to try to do is compartmentalize, put things in compartments. Because many times I allow my work to drag into my weekend, to my personal life, my time with my kids. And that's when I know that I'm really missing out, and I'm also becoming more burned out, right? And I think one of the problems is because I don't negotiate with myself when I decide to create those compartments. I don't ask myself what are really my priorities, both personal and professional. What are the things that I really want to care for, and what I want to strive for professionally. One of the things that I think that is critical is really respecting my calendar and using it. So now what I do, even in my calendar, I include goals that I have, long-term and short-term goals, in terms of where I do want to be 5 years from now, both professionally and personally. What are the things that I would like to do in my personal life? For example, one of the things that I like to do that relaxes me is painting. And I know I'm not a painter, but I like to do that. And even putting in my calendar, then on certain weekends, on certain weekdays, I'm going to set 3 hours aside to do that, right? That's very, very important. Or professionally, where do I want to be in 5 years, right? Do I want to go more into the research aspect of things, or do I want to go more into the administrative aspect of things? And the reason why priorities for me are very important, because many times there's certain opportunities that come that are unexpected. For example, a month ago, the opportunity to work on a collaborative proposal to support students came, and I got invited to the table at the ending of November to join in. So it's something that I was not expecting. It was not in my calendar, and now something that I'm devoting a lot of time to be able to get the data, to be able to get the proposal written, the part that comes from Arizona State. And then just last week, I got invited to join a proposal for a math institute. And so this morning I had even though I went to bed at 4 a.m., I had an 8 o'clock meeting, right, to a Skype meeting. And so priorities are important, because then I need to know, am I going to take those opportunities or not, depending on where I want to be professionally. And also, so when other opportunities come that are not really going to lead to where I want to be, I could feel confident saying no and not feel guilty saying no, because I know that is not something that I really want to strive for or be, is something that I really want to do. So I think that now like I said, I have priorities in my calendar that every so often they pop up and they remind me of where I want to go. And I put everything on my calendar, everything, even the time that I'm going to spend with my kid, helping her craft a project that she's doing for school, or the time that I'm going to go walk the dogs. Because if I don't do that, I tend to sometimes forget because I'm so busy with other things. So I tend to say, okay, I'll do that later. And I'm really I'm not respecting the compartments I set, and I'm letting my work and other things drag into other things. So I'm a firm believer that you have to use your calendar, and you have to put not just your appointments that you have with other people, but appointments that you have with yourself, and also goals that you have. One thing that has helped me a lot is reflecting on how I'm doing this self-evaluation on how I'm doing in terms of taking care of myself, my family, and my job, my goals, and where do I want to go, and how do I improve? How do I do things better? And where did I fail to do? I think many times we as individuals don't want to recognize when we've done things, when we've taken a wrong path, or when we fall short of our goals. And when I say our goals of really balancing life. But I think for me it's important because it helps me correct and pick another path. And it's always evolving. So there's always time for you to do things differently, right? And one of the things that I also sometimes that helps me a lot is disrupting negativism and self-criticism for myself. Because sometimes we're in a research world where everything is so like the expectations, and what we sometimes value or what we consider to be good has to be almost impeccable, right? And sometimes I end up criticizing myself and like bringing negativism to myself, which then puts me on this overcompensation where now I'm working overtime, trying to do over more than what I could honestly manage to do myself. So I'm trying to work really hard at disrupting. When I see myself doing that, ask myself, well, did I really did the best I could? And maybe, yes, it's not comparable to my colleague that did this and this, but hey, is it within my passions and my goals? And if it is, then I need to stop myself from being negative. So that's something that has helped me a lot to understand that. Now, one of the things that I'm really bad at is saying no and delegating. And as I move forward, especially more into more leadership roles, I realize how important that is. So really trying to delegate and trying to recognize and people that are really good at things that need to be done, so that I could, with comfort and with ease, be able to say, I know if I'm include these people, or if I ask these people to do these things, they're going to do it, and they're going to do it in many cases even better than I could. So doing that, I'm trying to work on that, and that's something that is very, very important for me to try to get better at. And one of the things that is key is also learning to adapt. The moving target is always changing. Even our goals are always changing, and adapting, being able to adapt, and like I said, and be flexible. And that's why my compartment now, I have to have room for time to learn. If there's a change that is happening, for me to learn, or if there's a new opportunity that comes, for me to be able to do it and know that, like, for example, today I'm putting a lot of hours of work, but then this weekend I want to really just completely have downtime and recharge. And sometimes recharging means physically having time down, but for me, sometimes recharging means going to conferences where I get inspired, where I get reminder of what my goals are, where I get those reminders that really remind me what my passions are. So even though going to those conferences sometimes in the time that I'm very busy really helps me refocus. So for example, like I love going to the conference or the Ford Foundation, some of the conferences that are more for minority or for women mathematicians, because it allows me to rethink about my life and where I'm heading. So that's something that I also value very much, and that I think is a way of recharging that is not really a physical time that you take off, right? And like I said, and always one of the goals that I'm always gonna, or one of the things that I'm always gonna stress is really, really using your calendar. Like I put in my calendar every single appointment with my students, and then I feel more comfortable saying no if I cannot make it, right? There's just no room, but I even put time for my research, time for myself, right? In the calendars, because otherwise, like I said, I forget. I always tend to put myself last, and then I forget that I haven't really spent time to take care of myself. And I also have sticky notes in my computer and in my bedroom and also in my office that remind me of life balance strategies and also self-care. So that because sometimes I tend to forget, especially when I get very busy and very overwhelmed with things. And that is always having constant reminders. It's important, whether it's in forms of sticky notes or even friends that you talk to that remind you of certain goals you had or certain things that you were supposed to do to take care of yourself and take care of your personal life, and you haven't done it. To me, that works incredibly well. And pretty much those are the advices that I could share in terms of that. And like I said, it's for me, it's been a challenge trying to really balance life, both from my immediate family to my extended family, and then my work when there's so many demands, because I'm the only woman, right? So then they have to have a woman in a certain committee, and it's an important job. And I know that if I don't go there, there's not going to be that representation. There's not going to be that voice. And being able to balance things that are very at the core of my passion and the things I care about, and then being able to do other things. But yeah. But I'll stop here and then let other speakers share their experience and their advice.
Thank you, Erica. That was really, Dr. Camacho, that was really well put. I really liked how you said making appointments with yourself. I feel like that's the key. We're going to move on to Dr. Sharon Milgram.
Great. Can you go ahead and advance the slides? I'm going to actually go ahead and use some slides. And let me say that, I tend not to use the phrase work-life balance, and I like to think of it more as an effort to try to integrate my work and my life, and to try to get energy from both, and to have them fit together well, and when they don't, to acknowledge that and move on, and either try to do better the next time, or just accept that sometimes there are some sort of rough edges and bumpy spots. If I could have the next slide. So I transitioned a while back now from an academic career to the NIH. And when I went to the NIH initially, I had a lab, and I also ran the Office of Intramural Training and Education, which is the office at NIH responsible for overseeing the career development and the experience of trainees on the NIH campus. And I travel a lot now, and I speak to students both at NIH and outside NIH. And I think that there's really four things that we all tend to worry about. And I say at times, but I think we almost always are worrying about this, maybe just a little or a lot. And they come down to really four questions, and that is, am I good enough? And will I get what I want? And do I fit in? And then, can I have it all? And that's where I think really, can I have it all comes down to, can I be happy at work? Can I be happy in life? Can I have the relationships that matter to me? Can I feel like a whole person as opposed to hands with pipettes or hands with a keyboard? And I think that to really address all of these concerns, but maybe especially the one about integrating work and life, we really need to think about and learn about two areas. And one is emotional intelligence, and the other is developing resilience. And I'm just going to give a couple of slides and hope people will go ahead and read and learn on their own, or find workshops that can really help. I think the only way to really feel that we've integrated our work and our life and everything that is important to us is when we have the ability to recognize and to understand and to manage our own emotions. We have to know what we feel, and then we have to be able to manage those feelings, to respond to them, and to do things to keep our emotions, our negative emotions, in check, but to acknowledge them and to make change. We also have to be able to recognize, understand, and respond appropriately to the emotions of others, especially when it comes to being available for staff, to mentor students, to be a good wife and a good mother and a good daughter-in-law and a good friend. I have to be able to sense when I'm a little too immersed in work and not paying attention. And I think emotional intelligence is not something that a lot of scientists think about, and it's certainly not something that we learn in graduate school. And I think it's a really important literature and a really important science for people to be immersed in. Next slide. And the second thing where I think we really need to learn the science and the literature and be immersed in is in the literature around resilience. And in particular, when I think about resilience, I think a lot also about the positive psychology literature. How is it that we learn not to just survive and hold on, in misery, but how is it that we learn to see what we're good at and use those things and be happy and satisfied? So resilience is the ability to adapt and grow through setback and adversity. It's the ability to look and see a really big challenge, a really big tension point between work and life, and realize that it is what it is and that I have to navigate it. And I want to be able to do that with awareness and with intention and with skill and in a constructive way. So resilience really is not, but sometimes we think of it as the ability to bounce back. And while that's maybe a really nice little picture to have in our head, we get knocked back and we bounce right up. It's really much more than that. It's the ability to navigate hard things in life in a calmer, more intentional, and more constructive way. And sometimes people think, well, you're either born resilient or not. I hear that a lot. But the honest truth is that resilience is a science, and it's a literature, and it's a set of attitudes and behaviors that can be learned and developed if we take the time to do some workshops and some reading and self-reflection, and if we practice. And so I won't be able to talk a lot about those things in depth, but I think that they are really two critical underlying things. Next slide, please. And so I'm going to give you three key takeaways from the workshops on resilience that we give at NIH. And the first is that resilience is really people plus process. It's the people that we go to when the going gets tough, when we need someone to help us reflect on what happened, when we need somebody to remind us what is important to us, and that we are only human, and that, you know, all people make mistakes. So it's people, and it's one other thing, process, what we do to take care of ourselves, what we do to address problems. And Erica talked a little bit about that negative self-voice that she sometimes can get really wrapped up in. A big part of the process of resilience is understanding our negative self-talk, or what the literature will refer to as cognitive distortions, and to learn how to respond to them and to hear them and then to let them go. And so resilience is two things: the people that we surround ourselves with and the practices and processes that we put in place to take care of ourselves. And the second key takeaway is those who are resilient prepare to be resilient. The problem is that we don't want to spend time on this when the going is good. We just want to get to work and do things. And we don't want to go to workshops on emotional intelligence or resilience or, wellness. We don't want to schedule time to take care of ourselves because we're feeling really great. But the problem is the minute we hit a bump, the minute something doesn't go right and suddenly we feel out of balance, we can't learn those skills then. We can't learn to be resilient in the heat of the moment. We have to learn to be resilient when we are feeling positive and focused and energized. And so really, we have to put a resilience practice into place, and we have to have it available for when we need it. And then the third key takeaway is on the next slide, and this is really my favorite one of all of them, and that is to do well, we have to be well. So I don't know where it is that science came to value exhaustion and constant work. Why is it a badge of honor to say, on Monday morning, oh no, I didn't do anything fun, I just worked? But for whatever reason, we seem to have, as a culture, developed that message, and we pass it on, even sometimes because we don't talk about it. So everybody thinks that's what's expected. But the honest truth is, if we really want to do well, we have to take care of ourselves. When we talk about wellness and self-care, it's good to think about this holistic approach or 4-quadrant approach. And this is the approach that's taught in the wellness courses that my office offers. And I have to say that I learned a lot by sitting in on those workshops. And we have to take care of our body and our mind and our heart and our spirit. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not religious, so I don't have anything spiritual to take care of, but actually just think of our spiritual health as whatever it is that makes us feel connected to something bigger than just ourselves, something bigger than what happened in the experiment or what happened that day at work. What is it that makes us feel really a part of communities, and many different communities? And so we really have to think of all 4 of those to take care of ourselves. Next slide, please. So I thought what I would do is point out 2 things. The first is how we all get in our way, and maybe some of these don't resonate for you. Maybe all of them will resonate. They certainly resonate in a good part for me. And then I'm going to share a few of my strategies in wrapping up. So the first thing is we get in our way by thinking that self-care can wait. Well, once I finish my qualifying exam, well, once I get my paper submitted, once I submit this grant, once I do, once, and before we know it, we're burned out and exhausted. And we are never, our most creative problem-solving self when we are exhausted. And when we are exhausted, we tend to snap at people. We tend to snap at each other. We tend to snap at ourselves. And I think one of the things that makes me sad that I realize is I tend to snap the most at the people that I really care about. The other thing that gets in our way is carrying around expectations that we have in ourselves, that we've set for ourselves. Some of them childhood or adult career myths. I have to be this, right? Or I'm supposed to be this. And some of those expectations are expectations that important people in our lives have put on us, really without our permission. And they love us, and it's meant maybe in a positive way, but we carry these expectations around, and we have to realize that they're expectations and evaluate them and decide which ones still fit us. The third thing that I think gets in our way is we listen to messages about our worth as a person and or a professional. Well, if you don't have a paper in one of the big three, blah, 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 right? Or, people who go to this program are better than people who go to that program. And some of these come from the science culture. Some messages come from the greater culture. Some messages come from people around us. And those messages can really chip away at our confidence. And the fourth thing that I think gets in the way of us really looking at what we want out of our work and our science and our career and integrating it with our life is that we all often let shame hold us back. There's a huge shame literature. Brene Brown is one of the most well-known researchers in the shame field. And, she points out that both women and men experience shame, but that women sometimes can get really hooked by shame. And we have shame about who we are and where we come from. And we have shame about our academic record and our professional record. We have shame about the choices that we make in our personal lives versus our work lives. And I think that it's worth it for us to think about which of these are really holding us back, which are the ones really getting in our way. And I know for me, it depends on the time and it depends on what I'm doing. But I think that I have at times really noticed all four of these bullets keeping me from really paying attention to what's important to me in life. And so I'll end with 2 slides, maybe 3 quick ones. Go ahead, next slide. And I'll tell you the 4 or 5 things that I do. It's funny, everybody talked about calendars. I am terrible at calendars. I almost never look. I double book. Lots of people have access to my calendar. I don't schedule things. Somehow in my head, I have a master calendar. But there are some things, and in listening to Erica, I was thinking maybe I should try again on the calendar thing. But I want to talk about a couple things. And one is journaling, and the other is counseling, both of which I've used to really expand my self-awareness and my emotional range. And the thing that is so impressive about both of them is how much they help me set healthy boundaries. I say no easier. I can ask myself, where does this fall in my, in the realm of important things to me? At the top, at the bottom, in the middle? Is this a really important person? And so I might bump it up a little because of that. Is this, something that really matters to me? And I think it also helps me really clearly express my needs and wants when it matters the most, so that I can delegate, so that I can ask for help, so that I can be clear when I just can't do something. There's a great literature on journaling. It lets us see patterns. It lets us talk to ourselves. Over time, we can see change. And if you're interested in the literature on journaling, the best literature to look at is the Pennebaker literature. A long time ago with a set of graduate students, I said, you all need to keep a time log. And I have this rule, if I ask the students to do it, I have to do it myself. A time log gives each of us insight into ways to find time. For example, the first time I did it, I realized I read the newspaper an excessive amount of time. And this was a long time ago. It's, I think it was years of wasted time. I read the same article in 6 different papers, same topic. It also helped me identify the best times. I'm not very energetic in the late afternoon, but I really can get things accomplished in the morning. And a time log, if you keep track of your energy, not just what you did, it lets you see early signs of burnout. So I started to notice, I'm writing, not feeling great, not feeling great, not feeling great. And it was day after day after day, and that's a sign of burnout. Another thing that has made a big difference for me is what I call double time commuting. So I mostly ride the metro. Occasionally I drive, but on the metro, I do something productive, not work productive most of the time, usually personal productive. Right now I'm reading Michelle Obama's memoir. It's inspiring. It's interesting. It makes me feel thoughtful about things. Sometimes I listen to TED Talk on a topic. Sometimes I read career articles. Sometimes I double time by walking to the metro. So I get a little bit of exercise instead of hopping on the bus. And so I think that's a really important thing, is how you use your commute. The fourth is that I have a big exercise community. The single most important thing for me to be emotionally intelligent and resilient is to exercise. I have a lot of excess energy. And both the community and classes make me accountable, and they also add value because I've made friends, and occasionally those friends help me out professionally. Occasionally I help them out professionally. But the accountability that comes from the community and also the amazing personal value added a lot. And then I have 4 things technology-wise. So I use a Fitbit, not to count steps per se, but it gives me a sense of whether I really sat too much. I do not think any of us think very well after sitting too much. I've been using a Fitbit for many, many years. And whenever I feel grouchy, I look at my Fitbit and it reminds me to get up. I have 2 apps I like. 3 Good Things is a way that I record 3 positive things that happen. I do 2 at the end of the workday and 1 at the end of the evening. And it's a way of training your brain to see positive things. It's also a way for me to see where I'm growing and learning. Mood Meter helps me track my moods. Sometimes I do that a lot. Sometimes I hardly ever do it, but it's a nice app. It looks at both your energy level and your emotional level. And I have a very carefully constructed Instagram feed that reminds me of the things that matter to me. My exercise, it has family members. It has things that are value added for me. And not things that are mind-numbing, distracting. And so when I'm feeling low, I'll flip through the Instagram feed. Sometimes it reminds me I haven't been to the gym in a while. Sometimes it reminds me to get into the kitchen. I have a lot of food on my Instagram feed. Next slide. So I'm going to end with, the picture's not there, so I'm sorry about that. What I was going to do was show a picture of all the important wellness things to me. It includes my family, my wife and my son, my good friends, the gym, my friends at the track, food things, art things. We all need a set of pictures like that. I call them wellness collages when I talk about them with students, where we put together things that really nurture us, that really make us feel good. And if we look at our wellness collage and we haven't done anything, haven't been to an art museum, or I haven't gotten into the kitchen, or I haven't spent really good time with my family, it's like a reminder. And almost every time I glance up and see my wellness collage, I smile. Even if I don't make a change, for 1 minute, I'm sort of back into that more integrated Sharon as opposed to work Sharon. So, we are where we are, and we know where we want to go. And the way to get there is to take care of our internal landscape, make sure that we're emotionally healthy and physically healthy, mentally healthy, and to use mentors, friends, and communities. And I think that those things help me a great deal to achieve really a positive way. I feel very positive about the way I integrate my work in my life, not every day, not all the time, but overall. And I think that's the important thing, is to focus on the overall. So I'll stop here so we can hear from Gail. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. That was excellent, and you had some excellent ideas there that I think many of us might be integrating. So just a reminder that this webinar will be archived on the FAFSA webinar website, and we'll have a link to it put up in about 3 or so days. And so now I'll turn it over to Dr. Bishop, who will sort of bring us home. And she also has a rich talk. And we might not be able to get to questions today, unfortunately, but I think that we're getting so much from this that I think it's okay. So I'll turn it over to Gail now. Thank you.
Okay, I know we're running late, and so I will try to be brief. I titled my presentation Paddling Your Own Canoe because the theme that I'd like to stress, in addition to all the good advice you've gotten from the previous panelists and the organizer of this meeting, is that you are unique, and the way that you achieve work-life balance is unique to you. And I think we often all compare ourselves frequently to other people and feel like we have to achieve success in the way that they did. But what I've learned over a long career is that that's not necessarily so, and you have to be who you are. So let's go to the next slide. Anna asked us to talk about our path. I'll do that very briefly because my path is sort of circuitous, and I thought some of you might find that comforting because we all tend to feel like we have to do things in one perfect linear way, and I certainly didn't. So I grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood, working-class folks in Milwaukee, and I attended a small liberal arts college in the Midwest, St. Olaf College, and I was a first-generation college student. The best that my parents ever thought they could possibly achieve was to send their children to college, and it was a great thing for my family. I earned a BA in biology, and right after college graduation, I married a third-year medical student at the University of Wisconsin who I'd known for a long time. I moved to Madison, and I became a lab tech to support us. And I didn't realize that actually people would pay you to go to graduate school. And I found that out when I took a class in immunology that I was allowed to do as part of my job. And my prof, bless his heart, said to me, "What graduate program are you in?" And when I told him I wasn't, he said, "Why not?" And I told him, "Well, we can't afford that." And he said, "You know, they'll pay you to be a graduate student," which was a real revelation to me. So I started a PhD there, but my husband matched for his residency at the University of Michigan, not Wisconsin. So I finished up just having taken my comps with a master's in oncology, went to Michigan, and earned my PhD. And in my last year there, my husband, who also came from a family without much money, had a scholarship through the Air Force, which meant that they owned him for 4 years, and they sent him to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in Goldsboro, North Carolina, which is not a felicitous place, but he had to pay back his scholarship. It allowed him to be debt-free. So we were apart for a year, and then the closest I could get to him was the Triangle area. And I went into a postdoc at Chapel Hill, and we had a commuter marriage for another 3 years, which was challenging and caused us to delay starting our family. But in the end, we were back together. He did a fellowship at Chapel Hill, and I decided instead of looking for jobs at that point that it really was time for us to be in sync. So I did another postdoc, learned new technical approaches, learned things that helped me in the end, and we finally synced up and came here to the University of Iowa together for jobs. In late '89, I became an associate professor with tenure in '94 and a professor in '98. So I'm revealing that I'm kind of a geezer in this group. During that time, we raised 2 sons who somehow survived all this to become nice men. And so, next slide, please. The take-home message from all that is that you can build a successful career and a rewarding life, even if and when the circumstances are not ideal. So don't agonize too much about when's the perfect time to have a child, when's the perfect time to do this or that. Life really is not perfect at all, but you can still manage to achieve what's most important to you. Next slide, please. So I've always enjoyed this proverb, and I'm going to tell you how it's helped guide me in maintaining my balance in life. Love many, trust a few, and always paddle your own canoe. Next slide, please. So the love many part of it, seek to get along with your colleagues. Being perceived as a jerk will ultimately hurt you. This may seem obvious, but sometimes when we're tired, impatient, and career-focused, we think, you know, the people who get all the rewards here are not nice people, so it's not important to be nice. But I would say for anything that someone who's not nice achieves, they still would have achieved more if they were. You have to live with these people, so stay nice. Next. And there's been a lot spoken here about saying no, which we, particularly those of us in this group who are women, really need to say a lot because, as someone mentioned, we're asked to be on every committee so that there's a woman on every committee. But I think you can say no effectively without necessarily burning a bridge. You all have also probably been in the position where you're asking people to do something. So you know when someone says no to you, you want that response to be prompt so that you can look for someone else. You want it to be polite, and you don't need to hear in great detail everything that's going on in their lives and why they have to say no to you. So don't do that to someone else. Everyone's busy, and the assumption that we're the only busy person in the room is probably arrogant. So I would say no in a way that preserves your potential to say yes at some future time when you may want to. Next. The trust a few part of this proverb, I felt, meant identify early on in your career reliable, ethical, and helpful colleagues that you respect, because they can be a great source for advice, for mentoring, and for rewarding scientific interactions. And also make the effort, and it does take time and effort, to both develop and maintain meaningful friendships, both in the professional setting and personal friendships that have to do with your other passions in life, because they will sustain you in bad times and they will make the good times even better. Next. And the always paddle your own canoe part is that you do need to listen to valuable advice from others. And every piece of advice you might get from another person in your life has a kernel of truth in it. But, next, beware the well-intentioned mentor, colleague, friend, or relative who gives you absolute rules for how to have a successful, rewarding career in life. And I'm sure you've all heard these rules from people. And what I've observed over the years is that these rules generally tend to fall into a single theme, which is, I'm successful, so therefore you must do everything the way I did it. But we all know as scientists, that's correlation, not cause and effect. Next. You are unique in your own strengths, your own goals, and your own priorities. Next. And the most important skill for you to build is the ability to learn from your experience and find out what works for you. And also be observant of the experiences of people around you, because that's an extra way to learn without going through it yourself. To continually find your own ways to grow and improve professionally and personally. Next. So the bottom line for me is, ask advice, but use your own common sense. Next. And this fabulous piece of advice came to me in a fortune cookie from the China Buffet restaurant in January 2002. But it's been an excellent piece of advice to take over the years. Again, achieving that balance of listening to the suggestions you're given, but filtering them through what's unique to you. Next. So my final thoughts are that a satisfying life is a combination of both what you accomplish and who you become. Next. You have to like that person you see in the mirror every day. And remember that nothing, even the best strategy, works every day. Next. Keep the long term in mind. Sometimes when you're going through a difficult period at home or at work, it feels like it will last forever. This report will never get done. My child will never be out of diapers. But before you know it, those things are over. So keep the long term in mind. Next. And as a scientist, you are trained to observe, to experiment, and to learn. So keep those skills sharp and never lose your sense of humor. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Gail. That was so wonderfully done. And I'm sorry we don't have time for questions and answers at this point, but I feel like the advice and stories that Dr. Camacho, Dr. Bishop, and Dr. Milgram gave just were awesome. We will have this webinar available on our website to share. And it should be posted within about 3 days. And so you can go onto the FASP website under FASP webinars and be able to see the archived webinar, and you can share it, you can listen to it again, to the great advice that was given by our 3 panelists. And I want to thank them for taking time out of their busy schedules, because I know that their schedules are busy. So thank you so much. You all have been wonderful. And I hope to see you all at future webinar.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting us. And
Thank you.
All right, goodbye.
Bye. 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 Thanks.